I got 160 slides in 1,200 seconds. I'm going to go over my predictions from 18, and then I'm going to make some from 19. Eisenhower said plans are useless, but planning is invaluable because it catalyzes conversation, so I hope this catalyzes some conversation. I predicted Wayfair would crash. I know enough about retail to be dangerous. The customer acquisition economics make no sense here. I was wrong. It's up 78%. What I thought was the pets.com of our generation is the Wayfair.com, or excuse me, the Overstock of our generation. I thought Amazon would acquire Nordstrom or Carrefour to get a foothold in the luxury or the grocery sectors, and I was wrong. Poland makes its first appearance in a World Cup final. I was wrong. They were knocked out in the first round. My 11-year-old son, was certain of this. I still haven't forgiven him. This is a naked attempt for me to seem more likable. This is me and my son. I thought 25 U.S. brands would launch online marketplaces. Marketplace is Latin for spend billions of dollars. It's very difficult to do. No one firm has the scale right now. CPG firms would unite to fight voice. Not yet. The grocery sector in the U.S. is actually the largest consumer sector in the world. It's also the least innovative. If you did a Google search for Kroger's and e-commerce until 2 years ago, the first return was a Wall Street Journal article where the CEO was saying that e-commerce made no sense for grocery. You're starting to see a lot of strange bedfellows, though, because now that Amazon is in commerce, it's sort of woken grocery from its sort of 50-year slumber. I think most of these companies are going to be acquired or out of business. I think there's only two that matter, and they're slowly but surely sucking the oxygen out of the room. That hasn't happened yet, and to be clear, I've been wrong on Twitter and Snap, and both seem to be carving out nice niches for themselves. And their stocks are up, with the exception of Snap, since the IPO. I'm sort of a conspiracy guy. I think Facebook and Google keep these guys in business so they can claim they have competition. I think they could put any of them out of business within 90 days. Each year I make a stock pick, and then I get together with my friend Mark Mahaney and I talk. This is my one stock pick in 17. Again, this was made in December of 16. And we've applied those to other companies to try and identify who could be the fifth horseman or who could be worth $300 billion plus. Netflix. Okay, so I got that one right. By the way, I want to recognize that a video on top of me speaking is like shavings of shit on a shit salad, but it helps hold me accountable and it gives me a chance to breathe. So this was my 18 stock pick, 2018 stock pick. Disney becomes the fifth horseman. Disney is the only old economy firm with the scale stones, access to capital, and leadership to develop a prime-like offering. Okay, so stock's up 18%, but I do think that they are landing counterpunches. Other big prediction, Amazon surpasses Apple in value. I've been making this prediction for a while, since Amazon was a third of the value of Apple, and I think we got that right. One-click ordering, I think we got that right, or zero-click. They're now proactively sending you products. So I like to talk a lot about technology. I spend a lot of time trying to advise companies on which technologies to overinvest and, almost as importantly, which ones to underinvest. I think it's time we officially call virtual reality dead and a failure. My favorite was 3D printing, super fast, inexpensive products really quickly. Super fast, inexpensive, high-quality products quickly. America and Europe have the ultimate 3D printer. It's called China. The Internet of Things, your pool and your blender don't need to speak to the Internet. And wearables are not Google Glass. Apple just announced one today. It will also fail. They fail to realize that consumers only wear something on their face that they think makes them more attractive to other mates. Google Glass is not a wearable. It's a prophylactic, ensuring you'll never have sex again. The two places to overinvest are voice and messaging. We've been bulls on voice for a long time. I think we got that right. The next kind of full of shit, overhyped technology, artificial intelligence. Listen to someone describe artificial intelligence. It sounds like a grifter describing blockchain. It's going to change everything, but they can't actually zero in on what it's doing to make your life better right now. The ad tech market surrenders to Facebook and Google. I think we got that right. Amazon Media Group revenue surpasses Twitter and Oath. This was the prediction from Morgan Stanley that it would do $4.5 billion in revenue in 2018. They were wrong. It actually ended up doing closer to $11 billion. It's now the fastest growing media company, over $1 billion in the world, just the media side of Amazon. And at this rate, by 2000, or within 5 years, it'll be the third largest media company in the world, Amazon. Our prediction December of 17 was that Facebook stock would peak after going up 30 to 40% a year since its IPO. After the first year, we got that right. Walmart would become the online grocery leader. Everybody thought it was going to be Amazon. Walmart has 5,500 well-lit, well-staffed refrigerators called stores, and they're taking advantage of it, and they're now the e-commerce leader. Cryptocurrencies crash. We got that right. That was pretty easy. M&A activity booms. Everyone's bulking up to try and push back on big tech. The breakup of big tech begins. Wage growth fails to materialize, and someone does the math highlighting that the heirs of Walton, Bezos, Zuckerberg, Gates, Brin, and Page will soon be worth more than 2/3 of U.S. households combined. Seems obvious now. I've been saying this for a long time. I wrote a book called The Four 3 years ago, said that these companies were a huge threat to society and that they would be broken up. And this was at a time when the only argument was whose CEO was more Christ-like or going to run for president. The breakup begins. I think that's happening. So I'm fascinated by corporate communications, and A.G. Sulzberger's talk I thought was very interesting. 30 years ago, there was a journalist for every corporate communications executive. The number of journalists has been cut in half. The number of corporate communications executives has tripled. There's now 6 corporate communications executives for every journalist in the U.S. I urge you to join me. I will return any call, any email from any journalist in the world. I refuse to meet or have anything to do with any corporate communications executive. I would describe their entire strategy based off of the psychology and the gestalt of a sociopath. And I'm fascinated by this. Sociopathy over-indexes among CEOs. It's a very difficult position. You have to disassociate yourself from your actions. Otherwise, you would be very stressed, living in a world of chaos, and quite frankly, sometimes very disingenuous statements to the public markets. So this is the definition, according to Psychology Today, of a sociopath. And I'm not going to read it out loud. But I would argue that this is a pretty decent blurb from Mark Zuckerberg if asked, what have you been up to the last 20 years at his 20-year high school reunion? The basic building blocks of sociopathy: false expressions of love, false promises of protection, fake compatibility, claiming you're the real victim, and then inventing fantasy villains. I pulled a series of quotes from the leadership at Facebook. You can argue that this is cherry picking, but there are so many quotes that fit under here. I think I would argue this is a representative sample. I'm not going to read through each of them. You can read them under the categories that, again, define a sociopath. This feels a bit awkward. Almost done. My prediction for 19, so let's go into predictions for the next 12 months. I think a Facebook senior executive is going to be detained and arrested. I think it's going to happen, and by the way, I don't say that lightly. I think it's going to happen on foreign soil. The rest of the world gets all of the downside of big tech. They get the job destruction, the monopoly behavior, the tax avoidance, and they get very little of the upside, which is stiffening the backbone of regulators and lawmakers. We now have the CEO of the fourth most valuable company in the world who could probably not fly over Canadian or British airspace without being escorted down by fighters and arrested. So this is the year that Tesla absolutely implodes. So overpromise, underdeliver is another gestalt of communications among big tech, but this has gotten out of control. Supposedly in 10 months, there's going to be 1 million automated cars, taxis from Tesla. So in 42 weeks, we're going to have 1 million automated Teslas. I've served on the board of 7 public companies. The idea that the CEO tweets out an announcement that he's taking the company public at a 40% premium to the marketplace and that the funding is secured would not only result in that person being fired the next day, it would result in calls to their family saying something is wrong with this individual and needs help. Greatness is achieved in the agency of others, full stop. And the CEO before, I think, recognized that. You can't build a great company unless you have great people. At the end of the day, a CEO is really about retaining and attracting great talent, and this is the revolving door at Tesla. We've entered in a consensual hallucination between Tesla and the markets that Tesla's not a car company, it's a tech company warranting their outrageous valuation. No, it's a car company. This is now the weakest board in America. I used to think it was Twitter who let a part-time CEO spend the afternoons at a company where he had an 89% share of his wealth. That to me made absolutely no sense, but the mantle has been passed to Tesla's board, which includes his brother and a group of people who clearly have absolutely no control over the CEO and are not decent fiduciaries for their stakeholders. Since we made this prediction on Pivot 3 months ago, the stock is down 25%. So the question becomes, who buys them? And most people, the most likely buyer would be another auto company. The only auto company that can buy Tesla right now is Toyota. So it'll most likely be a company from tech. I do think there's value there. It's a better product. It's an amazing brand. So if the question is this an individual who's been good for the world and is a genius and a fantastic product, or is this a company that's going to go out of business? The answer is yes. So there's the prediction. Big tech will add more value in the next 6 months than the total combined market cap of Boeing and Airbus. The market's got it wrong. They think the breakup of big tech will be damaging to their stocks. It's going to unleash tremendous value, and we've all bought into this narrative somehow that it'll be bad for investors when we finally do split up these companies. They almost lost the entire value of Boeing on the day it was announced. But if you look at the history of spins or breakups, typically, or almost always, the companies post the breakup accrete a great deal of value to their shareholders. I apologize, I'm going to have to go fast. If you look at AWS, on the spin, AWS is one of the 10 most valuable companies in the world. Somewhere worth between 300 and 600 billion in value, meaning as long as the remaining Amazon is worth at least 200 billion, again, accretive to shareholders. Instagram, I believe there are a lot of people who would love to own Instagram, worth somewhere between 200 and 104 billion, meaning that as long as Facebook is worth more than 100 to 200 billion with WhatsApp and the core platform, again, accretive to shareholders. So you're going to see the value of Boeing and Airbus added to big tech over the next 6 months as analysts get their pencils out and realize that the breakup of big tech is accretive, not damaging to shareholders. The business story of 19 is going to be big tech in healthcare. Definition of an industry that can be disrupted is they raise their prices faster than inflation without a correlated increase in productivity. My industry is number 2. Education, number 1, is healthcare. People like their healthcare, and they've exploded their costs. So the question is, which big tech firm is going to succeed in healthcare? It's easy. Ask yourself, who would you buy insurance from? So let's start with who we wouldn't. Nobody's going to tell Facebook they have diabetes or an STD. They're not in the running. Google has incredible data, incredible culture, but most of their healthcare, as far as I can tell, has been sort of CSR moonshots, curing death. Apple is the odds-on favorite. I don't think it's going to be the one, though, because unfortunately, it's saddled with investors that expect profits. The biggest healthcare company in the world within 5 years is going to be Amazon. They have the ability to perform Jedi mind tricks and start grabbing market capitalization and cheap capital from any industry just by wishing ill on it, just by announcing that they're putting out a press release saying, all right, we're going to work with Berkshire Hathaway and JP Morgan on healthcare. Was that opening a gym, opening a hospital? The next day, the healthcare industry sheds $31 billion in value. They announced they're buying a $110 million online pharmacy pill pack for $1.1 billion. Retail pharmacies shed $11 billion on the opening bell. They can deny any company the mother's milk of business, and that's access to capital. This is why we need to break Amazon up. No one company should control the markets, and Amazon could put any company's stock in this room down 30% in 30 days with 3 press releases. They also have access to unbelievable data. They know how your body mass index, whether you're in a monogamous relationship, your wealth, whether you have kids, a reason to live, and they can basically become the ultimate actuarial force and decide how healthy you are, and then they're going to do this.
Dear Scott, are you aware that Amazon Prime now offers Amazon Health Insurance? We can offer you better coverage for you and your loved ones at a fraction of the price. Say, Alexa, tell me about Amazon Prime Health for more information.
Big business initiative, recurring revenue bundles. The ultimate is Amazon Prime. The way to accrete household income is in marriage. The marketplace likes fidelity over serial dating. So monogamy is the ultimate business relationship. Everyone's trying to get subscriptions, recurring revenue. The companies that are outperforming their peers have entered into a monogamous relationship with their consumer set. Even old economy companies such as Restoration Hardware has figured out a way to get 500,000 people to pay $100 a year. This is the only way you can get your revenues top line up only 14%, but get your stock to double, and that is to figure out a way to get into a monogamous relationship, and I think that's where the world is headed. We're going to digress to a series of airline alliances in the consumer world, one for your luxury, one for your fitness. I'm flying to Cannes next Sunday on an inferior airline called Air France, and the reason I do it is I've entered into a monogamous relationship with SkyTeam because I love Delta, by the way. Some brands that could do this, I want Nike to take over my fitness or my knee replacement. I want them to take over ingredient branding of hotels because I like to work out and eat a little more healthy on the road, and they have that credibility to do that. And I think we're going to digress to a series of small network brands or bundles, recurring revenue bundles. Big prediction for the year is woke, and that is we're overrepresented by conservatives. 70% of our senators come from 20% of the population, mostly red state. But all of the money is accreting to people in cities, non-traditional families with college educations, i.e. a Democrat. So as a result, companies are finding their woke values. They used to be nonpartisan. Now they're very woke. Why? Because it's smart. I don't know if they're principled or not, if they actually believe this stuff, but it makes sense economically. Nike does $35 billion, $20 billion outside of the U.S. Nobody outside of the U.S. thinks the U.S. has figured out race relations. They do $15 billion in the U.S. Two-thirds are under the age of 35. Show me someone who can buy a $150 pair of Flyknit shoes who's under the age of 35. I'm going to show you a Democrat. So they risk $3 billion of their business to strengthen relationships with $32 billion. The people who went out and burnt their Nikes used their Discover card to go out and buy their first pair. The ultimate perversion of our society at the hands of big tech was exemplified in 2018 by what I call the shit show HQ2 contest. This wasn't a contest, it was a con. This is me taking a victory lap. These are film clips from 18 months ago. The new headquarters are going to be in the metro area of New York or D.C. because that's where a 53-year-old man worth $105 billion wants to spend more time.
You come right out with and say they're going to the D.C. area.
It's either going to be D.C. or New York. I've been on a dozen public and private company boards. The CEO always cloaks the strategy of the second headquarters in business issues. It only comes down to one thing. The number one reason companies move headquarters is simply where the CEO wants to spend more time. The next headquarters for Amazon will be Washington, D.C., the metro area. And the reason why, and it was always going to be D.C., is one, the Bezos have a home there, and you get the idea. This was never a contest. It was an abuse of the Commonwealth. Oh, by the way, the Bezos have 3 homes, and now all of their headquarters are within 7 miles. This was an abuse of the Commonwealth. It was nothing but an elegant transfer of wealth from municipal fire school and police districts. It reflects a lack of code and character on the part of Jeff Bezos and his board. But it was genius. Look at how many media hits. By the way, HQ2 has received more media hits than the tariffs on China. I think the immunities are finally beginning to kick in against big tech. I track all my inbound inquiries from the press. What are they calling me about? For the first 6 months of 2018, the number one inquiry was, what can Mark and Cheryl do? What can Mark and Cheryl do? It's pretty easy. They can be fired. The CEO of Nissan is accused of expense impropriety and ends up in a Tokyo jail. The head of J.Crew has a disagreement with his board and is ousted. I can't tell you the minor things we fire CEOs on my boards for all the time. Yet we seem to have this existential crisis around firing Mark and firing Cheryl. There's this notion he can't be fired because he controls the board. I get it. But if they all did their job and grabbed hands and said, we're kicking this guy up to chairman, if the next day he removes the entire board, I think he'd have a crisis on his hands. So the answer is, I do not think that Mark Zuckerberg is going to burn the village to save it or go full Cersei on the board. We need to get rid of the macho test. We bought into this notion in big tech for some reason. We've been co-opted into believing that any sort of regulation or antitrust is socialist or worse, European. I go on Fox once a week because I believe it's important as part of the resistance to go behind enemy lines, and this is how they introduce me.
He's a socialist, but we'll have him on the show. You're a socialist. You are a socialist, are you not? You're an interesting guy because you're a socialist. Stern Professor of Business, Scott Galloway, frequent guest on the program, and an all-round good guy despite his socialist past.
Taught at a business school. The only wealth I've ever created is options on equity. I've hired and fired probably 1,500 people, but according to Fox, I'm a socialist because I think big tech should be broken up. Without antitrust, we don't have competition. If we didn't have the DOJ moving on Microsoft, we wouldn't have the object of every innovator's affection, Google. We'd all be saying, I don't know, Bing it. Imagine two ecosystems. I'm out of time, so I got to go fast. One is Apple, Facebook, Google, and Amazon, the one we have now. Now imagine an ecosystem with these companies. Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, Messenger, Google, Google Cloud, YouTube, Amazon, AWS, Amazon Fulfillment, Apple, and iTunes.
Search your feelings. You know it to be true.
I'm going to ask you to search your feelings. Where is there more M&A activity? Where is there more venture-backed startups? Where is there more job creation? Where is there more competition where someone might raise their hand and go, I know what, let's create a safe environment for our teens. I know what, as a means of differentiating, let's make the requisite investments such that our platforms aren't weaponized and our democracy isn't perverted in elections. I always like to make a stretch prediction, so this is my stretch prediction for 19. McKinsey, Bezos, marries Sheryl Sandberg. They pool their collective wealth. They become the largest shareholder in Google, where Sheryl is sick of working for old white guys and reanimates the Google Plus social platform. McKinsey takes over voice so she can kick her ex-husband for the next 20 years. And then they decide to legally adopt Evan Spiegel. My final prediction in 18 was the world becomes a better place. I was wrong. This is the Dow Jones Industrial Average. This is a very damaging metric because we believe it's a proxy for our nation's health. It's not. It's a proxy for the economic well-being of the top 10%. Spoiler alert, they're killing it. This is a better indicator of how we're doing. This is life expectancy in the U.S., which has declined for the first time in our history 3 years in a row, mostly because of opioid deaths that will take more lives this year than the entire Vietnam conflict. We've also decided in record years of employment to exploit our national debt. It's as if we literally said to the future, screw you, I want mine, I want it now. We're all obsessed with Fox News. People say, well, okay, they ran that same video of Pelosi. That's true. 2.4 million people watch Fox. Average age is 67. A 30-year-old accidentally flips on Fox. That means someone 104 is watching it. Fox is totally irrelevant. This is Facebook, 1.6 billion active users. So this is the damage that video gets on Fox. This is the damage that video gets on Facebook. We are dealing with a dumpster fire versus a mushroom cloud. We also, these companies have less scrutiny because of the Content Decency Act, so you have 400 times the damage, half the scrutiny. Our proportions around scrutiny relative to damage are totally out of whack. Whenever I'm in a place, I like to give a nod to somebody. Military service, fidelity, national pride, bipartisan support, showing an irrational passion for a child that isn't yours. The McCain's adopted a child. Where have these gone? Let's recap. I believe big tech reflects sociopathic tendencies in terms of its communications. Tesla's going to come undone. The big four will add more value than Boeing and Airbus in the next 6 months. The business story of 19 is big health. Recurring revenue bundles every company should be thinking about. Companies are about to find their woke principles for shareholder value, not because there's any principle decision. I do believe the immunities are finally kicking in, and I do believe McKinsey Bezos could marry Sheryl Sandberg. I wrote a book on happiness because, let's be honest, when you hear me talk, you immediately think of happiness. I brought 100 with me. They're going to be out in the lobby. I'll be signing them. My name is Scott Galloway. I teach at NYU, and I appreciate your time.